So this is a 1972 Apache, and if you can tell, the roof dips down in front of the vent there. This is one of the campers that doesn't have the roof panel, so it's actually lasted quite a long time because it doesn't have that extra weight in there. But you can see the roof dips down next to the vent because the vent is super heavy and the bows have definitely lost some of their shape. And so what'll happen is you get standing water up on there because the bows have lost their shape and that roof vent's so heavy it's starting to pull it down. And over time the sun, it'll warm the plastic up, the plastic will settle down, and then when it cools off it'll harden a little back up again. Here we have a 75 Apache. It's the same model, they're both Ramadas, but as you can tell this one has arch to it. The vent's actually a little bit higher than right below it, and then it kind of curves down to the outside. So this one sheds water pretty well, but you can see there's still indentations from the roof bowels in the top. So even though it sheds water, you've got those indentations from the roof bowels. Now I think if you put something fairly hard over the bowels to distribute the weight evenly, that over time the sun would warm these up and smooth the roof back out if you had something fairly stiff right above the bows. Now this one does have the roof panels on it, and so it does have the extra weight. So when we first got it, the problem was magnified greatly. It was way worse than that 72 that I just showed you. And I'm going to show you what we did to get the slope and the roof back so it would shed water. Alright, so this is the inside of the 1975. As you can see, there's a spider, and this camper has the panels. Now up here, this is the center bow. There's 5 bows on this camper, and there's 3 30-seconds cable. And what we do is we wrap it around the back of the bow, and then I put a ferrule on it, which is that guy right there, and we run it to the other side, where again we put it through a ferrule, but this time it's also going through an M8 turnbuckle. Now that's stainless steel. The cable itself is galvanized. It doesn't matter if you use galvanized or stainless. And then we clamp that ferrule down, and then what we did over here is we took the same cable, we wrapped it around the back of the loop and put it through a ferrule again and clamped it down. And to clamp it down, I just use a pair of bolt cutters that I've ground the tips out of. So instead of cutting the ferrule, it just clamps it down because I made blunt tips out of this. And at the hardware store, they'll also have crimpers for those ferrules as well. But our particular hardware store, their crimpers are horrible, so I just use mine because they work better. Now these are super cheap. I'm sure you can get these at like Home Depot or Harbor Freight. I bet Harbor Freight has these like for 10-15 bucks. Now on the center one, there's a reason we used the 3 30-seconds, and because from what we can tell, the center bow actually needs to be bowed more than the subsequent bows. And so on the subsequent bows, this is 1/16 cable, which is super easy to go around the back of the bows. And if you can tell, I went right about in the middle on that, and then we did the same thing, another ferrule and a turnbuckle. Now these are 7 30-seconds turnbuckles on these, but we had a problem with those because the tension on the cable was actually enough to start straightening out the turnbuckle. So I would suggest using the heavier turnbuckles like this M8 over here. You can get these on Amazon pretty cheap. And like I said, the center bow is bowed the most. Then the next bow over is bowed a little bit less than that. And the end bow is bowed way less than that. And so they have less tension on them. Now the strength on this cable here, the smaller cable, is tested out like 96 pounds of strength. And so we use the lighter cables on the outer 2 on each side of the middle, and then this heavier one in the middle. Now why we did that is because the middle bow has more pressure on it, and we actually snapped the cable. And a lot of the old timers will say you shouldn't do this because it's not original, and they say the correct way to do it is to rebow the bows themselves outside of the camper and then reinstall them. Well, it was kind of a failed design to begin with, which is why the roofs are failing now and why they're starting to dip down. And this is kind of a permanent solution. And what I really like about it is it's adjustable. One thing I've never found is how much to bend these bows. It didn't matter how much research I did, I could never find out an exact measurement on it. And so this allowed me to adjust it from the inside, then go outside and look and see what it actually looked like. And that's how I found out that the center bow was bowed a lot more than the outer bows. Now, when it comes to that dipping in the ceiling, in between the bows, where you can see that there's pronounced dipping, well, behind these trim panels here is insulation. There's styrofoam in there, and styrofoam's not very tough. And over time, you got heat and contraction, expansion and contraction due to the heat and the cold, and that styrofoam starts to break down. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up in there and we're going to get rid of that styrofoam, and we're going to put hard panels behind it. I haven't figured out exactly what kind of material to use yet. I'd prefer to use like aluminum, but that's probably not going to happen. So we're going to kind of shop around and see if we can find some hardwood panels that are stronger than the original, but we still want to keep them lightweight because we don't want that extra weight on the roof. So I'll do an updated video later. So these turnbuckles can be found on Amazon for relatively cheap. I bought a 5-pack for, I don't know, maybe like 12 bucks. And the cable and the ferrules I purchased at our local Ace Hardware, but I'm sure you can buy them at Home Depot as well. I preferred Ace because the service is better there. And it was relatively inexpensive. I think we did the entire camper for like under $30. So it's definitely not expensive. It's worth doing it just to help the roof shed water. If you have any comments or solutions, please feel free to post it in the comments. Now, this is a good system. It does help shed water, but it's not perfect. Like I said, I still have the dips between the bows. I haven't 100% figured out how to get rid of those yet. And if you have, we would all love to hear about it, because that information is invaluable. I mean, we could try many different things and many of them could fail. Whereas if you have the right solution and it works, you could save a lot of people a lot of time and money, and we would all be very grateful. So, hope this helps you guys out, and happy camping.